So we're going to go over, I'm going to show you my system and my solar system off-grid, and I'm going to talk about first how to size your system. There's a lot of information on there on how to size your system. Some of it's kind of confusing. So through trial and error, I've kind of figured it out and used some different resources online. So the first thing you want to do, people talk about, is you got to figure out your usage. How much power you're going to draw. The way I sized mine was I used my biggest appliance, which is my refrigerator. I found a yearly usage on that, and it came up with 1.3 kilowatt hours a day that it uses. So, and then the only thing I have on top of that is some lights. Use LED lights only for minimum wattage usage, and like run a computer, the printer occasionally, and that's about it. So I sized my system at 4 kilowatt hours a day that I would need to use, and from that number, that's how you're going to size your battery. So you're going to pick a number like 4 kilowatts, 10 kilowatts, whatever you think your daily usage is going to be. That's how we're going to size your batteries. So that's the first step, is sizing your batteries. So what you want to do is that 4 kilowatt hours is essentially only 30%, should only be 30% of your whole battery bank. At least that's the number I like going with. Some people say 50. It depends on the type of battery you have, but I'm using a lead acid. So I only want to go down to 70% of the capacity of the battery. I don't want to go below that. It'll extend the battery life. So I used 4 kilowatts in my formula as my 30% usage. That's what's available to me. I can use 4 kilowatts. So I'll put the formula up there, but if you do 4 over x equals 30 over 100 and then cross it, you get 30x equals 400, and that comes out x equals 13.33. So what the 13.33 is that's how many kilowatt hours your battery bank needs to be. So it needs to be 13.33 kilowatt hours, which is 13,333 watt hours. So that's how we want to figure out how big the battery is. So I need a battery bank that's about 13,333 watt hours, so that I only use 4 of that a day, though. I'm going down to 70% of the battery capacity, and then it's getting recharged by my bank here. So usually I stay within that 4. Sometimes I go over and I use 5. That's okay. So the formula to use here then also with your batteries, when choosing your batteries, is, remember this formula: volts times amp hours equals kilowatt hours. So either decide here if you're going to do a 48 volt system or a 24 volt system. I went with a 24 volt system. It just works out better with the batteries that I have. I have 6 volt interstate batteries that are 232 amp hours each, and I ran them in series parallel, so I have 8 batteries, and I'm running a 24 volt system. So essentially I have 2 24 volt banks. And what that does is it ups those batteries. When you run them in series, it takes it 6, 12, 18, and then 24 volts. And then when you run them in parallel, it doubles your amp hours. So I have 2 24 volt banks that are in parallel. So I have a 24 volt system at 564 amp hours. And so with those batteries, that gives me 13,536 watts of energy, so 13.5 kilowatts. So it's just above what I need, so that's the right threshold. If I went with a 48 volt system, if I just ran all my batteries in series, then it would be at 232 amp hours, and I would get 11,136 watts. So it's a little bit below. So technically, usually the higher voltage is better. That's what you want to do. It's more efficient. It's easier to go from 48 and then use an inverter to take that at 110. But 48 volts, they're more efficient systems, but for me the 24 volt works. So you just got to figure out what you want to use. So if you want to figure out like amp hours, if you know that you need 13,333 watts of power, and you know you want to do a 24 volt system, just do 13,333 divided by 24, and it'll tell you the amp hours of the battery you need. So that 13,000 divided by 24, that's 555 amp hours. So you need to find batteries that'll give you 555 amp hours, and the way you can do that is you can get those 232 amp hour interstate batteries. You just run them in parallel, and that doubles your amps. So when you run in parallel every time, you're doubling your amps. So that's why I did mine the way I did. If you did a 48 volt system at 13,333 watts, you would get you would only need batteries at 277 amp hours. And again, that's because you're just running them all in series. So you only needed to get up to 277. Now the batteries I had were 232, so I couldn't do that. That's why I went partially with the 24 volt system. So that's how you size your batteries. You figure out your usage, use that as 30%, and make your battery sized based on what you think you're going to use, and pick your voltage system. And then that voltage obviously is also going to determine what type of inverter, the voltage of your inverter that you're going to use. Alright, so once we've sized our batteries, now we need to size how big should our solar array be, how big should the PV array be, how many panels are you going to need to keep that charged. So again, we're going to use that 13,333, that's just my number, yours could be different, but I'm going to use that number. And what you want is the ratio between your panels and your battery bank to be 1 to 10 or less. So your panel should be 1/10 of the wattage of your batteries or less. Like 1 to 8, 1 to 7 would be really good, and this also depends on where you live. If you're in an area that gets sun all the time, you're in like Arizona or something like that, then 1 to 10 is going to work fine. But if you're in the northwest somewhere and you're not getting sun very much, you're going to want like a 1 to 2, 1 to 3 wattage. So what that means is just take 13,333, divide it by 10, and that gives me 1,333. So I need panels, a panel array that comes out to 1,333 watts. So you can go out and find the right panels to do that, and the number of panels that you want to do that. A lot of people arrange them in panels of 3. They run 3 in series, and then bring those down as parallel. They use like 6 panels. I'm using 4 panels right now that are 320 watts each. It gives me 1,280 watts. And there's the Sunivas. So I have 2 run in series and 2 run in series next to that, and they come down parallel. So I'm doubling my voltage on them, so I get a fast track of power coming down to my my charge controller. But on a nice sunny day, that picks up. It goes well above 1,280. I've seen it up to 1,500 watts sometimes. So that's plenty of power. I'm right at a 1 to 10 ratio. I'm a little bit over. If I wanted to do a little bit better, I would buy 2 more panels and up that a little bit so that I could be more at like a 1 to 8 ratio. But right now it's working for me. So that's how you size your solar panels. Just take that wattage that you figured out for your batteries, divide it by 10, and that should be the minimum amount of panels you need to buy. That'll give you the wattage for the minimum amount of panels. And always make sure that your panels are much higher voltage than your system is putting in. So I've got 24 volt battery bank. Technically those panels they're called 24 volt panels, but they put out 36 volts each, and then ran in series they bring out 72 volts. So it's coming down at 72 volts on each side, and a lot of times it actually comes down at like 80 volts. And okay, so we size the solar panels. Next thing you want to do is size your charge controller. And the way you size your charge controller is just figure out. Again, we're going to base it off of the panels, and you're probably going to either buy like a 60 amp or an 80 amp charge controller for this size of the system. I've got an FM60, but you can figure that out as figure how many panels. Let's say you bought 6 panels at 320 watts. That gives you 1,920 watts. And then take that 1,920 watts and divide it by the voltage of your system. So 1920 divided by 24 gives me 80 amps. So if I had 6 panels, I would want to use an 80 amp charge controller. At 48 volts, that's only 40 amps. So again, there I would buy like a FM60 or FM80. You really can't go wrong with buying like that Outback FM80 MPPT charge controller. But if you take wattage, divide it by volts, it's going to give you your amps. All right, again, part of that same formula that we're using at the very beginning. So that's how we figured out how to size batteries. Size your solar panels based on that, and then you size your charge controller. And those, your really big components. Then you're going to want to pick your inverter, and I would definitely go with a pure sine wave inverter. I've got a Samlex 1000 watt pure sine wave inverter, and it runs my refrigerator, all my lights, my computer. It does everything, and it's really works really well. One of the big mistakes people make is they way oversize their inverter, and they get an inverter that just draws power constantly. It's always running its fan, and it's constantly running whether you've got a load on it or not, and it drains the batteries down. So don't buy too big of an inverter. My 1000 watts doing great for me. If you're running more appliances and stuff, you might want like a 2000 watt pure sine wave. And they're a little bit more expensive than your mod sine wave, but they're well worth the money. They work great. Alright, so after going over the sizing, I'm just going to show you my system really quick and my setup. So there's my FM60 charge controller there. You can see it's in the bulk phase right now, so it's bringing my batteries up and charging them. Right now today, I've generated 1.1 kilowatt hours of power today, and I've got 920 instantaneous watts, 0.92 kilowatts instantaneously coming off the panels. And there's my Samlex 1000 watt pure sine wave inverter. Again, that thing is well worth the money. It's really good. And then there's my mod sine wave. That's like my backup. I use that when I need to like run some power tools or something like that that draw a little bit more amperage. And then here's my battery bank. Here's my 8 interstate 6-volt batteries. So ran in series, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are ran in series, and same thing on the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4 ran in series. So that gives me a 24 volt battery bank up here and a 24 volt battery bank up here. Each one of those banks is 232 amp hours, and then because I ran in parallel, we got the negative jumper there and positive jumper here. That doubles your amp hours. That gives me 564 amp hours. So it's 24 volt system at 564 amp hours, and that gives me that 13,500 watts of storage that I have available for use down there. On the back, I'll show you where the fuses are at. So there's all my fuses. The top one is my 150 amp, and that's covering my pure sine wave inverter. This one here is a 60 amp. This is the PV array coming in, and that's 60 amp because I have the FM60 charge controller. Another 60 amp. This is from the battery bank to the charge controller. It's powering the charge controller. And then the bottom here is a 200 amp, and that's for the mod sine wave inverter. There's the PV array up there. My 4 320 watt panels. Again, the 2 on the left are ran in series, and the 2 on the right are ran in series, and they come down parallel and into the side of the box here. And you can see down in that bottom battery bank there's a little vent hole that I made there, and one here as well, just to vent out, escaping gases and things like that. But that's the system. I'm gonna put a link at the bottom of the video also, and how I built the box. So if you're interested in building a box of the same size to house everything, I'll put that link in there. It'll be a 2-part. And yeah, if you got any questions, put them in the comment section. All right, thanks.